This is a meeting of the Devens Jurisdiction Framework.
Recording in progress.
This is a meeting of the Devens Jurisdiction Framework Committee. Today is September 11th, 2024. Before I call the roll, I'd just like to make a couple of related announcements. Brian Sawyer will not be attending at this meeting, but he has informed us that he will be a regular attendee, not as a select board member from Shirley, but rather as the Shirley Town Administrator. And also, Dan Nason is taking the place of Tim Bragan, and we'll get to introducing you in a moment. Now I will call the roll. Janice Livingston.
Here.
Robert Pontbriand.
Here.
Rich Maori.
Here.
Dan Nason.
Here.
Brian Sawyer. Logan Breeze.
Here.
Bill Marshall.
Here.
Neil Angus. John Cater, Odile Smith, Kristen Cullen. We have a quorum. We are in order. Minutes of our...
Hold on, can you hand me the? Yep.
Our August
From 12 June?
12, we did not meet in August.
No.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna share the screen. And can you guys see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here are the meeting minutes.
Are there any proposed edits to these minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
Rich, second by Robert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Without objection, the minutes are approved.
Abstain.
You
Noted.
didn't notice any spelling errors, right?
Nope.
Okay then.
Okay, stakeholder updates for items not on the agenda. Town of Air. Robert, Janice?
Mr. Chair, on the local level, our local committee continues to meet, has developed a schedule. It has a new chair. Our new selectman, Chris Tavares, is chairing the local committee. We've scheduled a tour of Devens. He'd like to do another tour of Devens on October 3rd at 5 o'clock of the air portion. And we met with our Parks and Rec department at the last meeting. We've met with our DPW, police, and fire. The committee's looking to meet with Janice for the November meeting to get more information about what the Framework Committee does. And we're posting on the Devens Committee, local committee webpage, synopsises from each of the departments. So the review and research is underway, and I think the committee is on the right track.
Okay.
That's good.
And a replacement for Alan?
So Janice and I are gonna work on that.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Okay, very good. Town of Harvard. Rich, do you want to introduce Dan?
Everyone. Dan Mason, our new town administrator. He started beginning of about a month ago.
Yep.
Came from us as the head of DPW in Sudbury, town of Sudbury, and has had a seamless transition so far. And we're really looking forward to him getting up to speed on everything regarding Devens and this committee, and then being an active participant moving forward.
Great. Dan, would you like to say a few words on your own behalf?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Rich, for that introduction. Air is not foreign to me. I was the DPW director here for quite a while as well, so
That's right.
it's good to be back and happy to be involved in this committee.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Thank you.
Also from Harvard, the Harvard Devens Jurisdiction Committee has met. We have, and I may have mentioned at one of our last meetings, that the committee would like to hold a public meeting. It's been a couple of years since we've done that. Unfortunately, the main topics that we would anticipate people having interest in are financial questions and the housing issue. And since both are, we've struggled to get financial information, complete financial information from Mass Development. Oddly enough, Dan Rivera, the former CEO, who was no real friend of this process, did provide us with a really comprehensive financial analysis of the agency and Devens, and we're struggling to get that complete picture now from the current staff there, but we're continuing to work on that. They provide kind of an overview financial budgets, which for our purposes, for really wanting to drill down into the costs associated with operating Devens, we need more detail than that. Anyway, so we're lacking that information, so our interest in our ability to hold a public meeting of some sort is in abeyance. One thing speaking of the committee, there has been a change to it. Rich, do you want to tell the committee about the...
Yeah, we changed the composition of it to include someone from the school committee, just given that education is such a priority for figuring out Devens and implications there. So, and we recognized we didn't have someone from the school committee representing just the school committee point of view. So, changed the composition. It's an even number, but candidly, we're not voting a lot on things. So, I think that's okay. It.
Right, so we do have a candidate. Apparently there's someone from the school committee who is interested, and her application will be brought before the select board at some point soon. So. Okay, Town of Shirley. Logan?
No updates. We will be adding, I believe, Brian Hildebrandt as a representative, but he has not been appointed yet by our board. But besides that, no real updates on our end.
Okay. And he's a select board member?
Yeah, he took Brian's place when Brian didn't run. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have two Brians, spelled differently though.
When's your next meeting that you'll be appointing him to the committee?
Our next meeting isn't until not the next Monday, but the following Monday. This is the 20th, 24th? Yeah.
Would you shoot us an email saying that he's been formally appointed, and I'll add his name to the website?
Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
great, thank you.
Devens representative, I don't see John.
John sent an email saying he wouldn't.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, he was not hopeful.
Who knows, maybe he'll join in later and we'll go back to him or something, but.
Devens Enterprise Commission, Bill or Neil? You might be muted.
No new information right now.
Okay. Okay, under old business, one-stop grant application. Robert, any update on that?
So, Mr. Chair, and for the committee's benefit, as you know, we submitted the application for the grant funding for the committee. At that time, the target date for the state to announce the recipients is the September-October window. I did check after I got your email, Mr. Chair, and they haven't made a decision yet, but they said they're on track for the September-October timeframe. As soon as I get that, it's generally an email notification I'll send to the committee.
Great.
And then, as discussed before, the town of Air will, it's the committee's grant, don't get me wrong, but the town of Air will provide the admin support for the grant.
Okay, Robert, could you send a copy of the grant application if it's,
Yep.
or a summary of it to all the members?
Why don't I do two things? I'll send it to everybody, and then we could also post it on the website.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And what I'd like to suggest to the committee, it's a substantial grant, is it 300,000 or?
Yeah.
Likely, that's, the intent of the grant is to help move things along to determining, in the determination of permanent governance at Devens. It's likely not nearly enough money to do it. So one thing I'd like to suggest to the committee, once you have a copy of the grant, and we'll keep it on the agenda, and we'll start talking about what it is we would like to start with, or if we do get the grant, how would we like it applied? What information would be useful to all the stakeholders? And if we were going to hire a consultant to do that. So be thinking about that for our next meeting, how we might want to use this money most efficiently, and hopefully we'll get it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one thing else also under old business that I should have put there is the status of the economic development bill that was not passed by the legislature.
Yep, it's stalled. Yeah.
Anybody have any kind of an update on that?
last I saw, Senator Eldridge had posted that it would, everything was stalled, and if they're called back, then he's happy to go back and approve it. So that was what he was tweeting. So there's your update. It's stalled until they figure out what they're doing.
right.
But the other problem is with the affordable housing, this whole, we want to increase our affordable housing. Again, great, everybody have a roof over your head, I'm all for it and everything like that, but now you've lost a hospital. So that affects the services, going forward. So, you have a big problem now.
Yeah.
And she won't talk to us.
Neil or Bill, do you have any kind of an update on, obviously this committee is interested in the housing amendment or the housing section of that bill. Do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything to add.
Just that the bill included a lot of elements for towns and cities across the state's businesses. So I do expect the legislature to take it up again this month. So stay tuned.
Okay. Now, in anticipation of the passage of the bill and its provision for expanding housing at Devens, are you aware, has the DEC done any work in anticipation of that, or are you aware that mass development is?
I have no idea.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So I'll keep that on the agenda for next time as well.
The
Okay.
economic bill?
Yeah,
Victor, would you like me to reach out to Jamie and ask?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If the timing of it and any changes to it. As we know, that bill provides for the creation of a working group.
I thought that was taken out. Didn't somebody say that was taken out?
I don't remember.
That part was taken out?
No, they kept it in there, but they were,
Well, there was.
Because they already have the
they
group?
took out, and they unfortunately took out the residents of Devens as a stakeholder, but that was an omission by mistake, according to Jamie's office, so they were going to put that back in. But I thought the concept was still going to stay.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
That's
Okay.
Neil?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Devens committee was left out of one version, and the Devens Enterprise
right.
Commission was
Is that
put
right,
in
Robert?
in the other
Right.
version, and now they're both. That will be corrected no matter what happens with the bill. So both the Devens committee and the Devens Enterprise Commission will be included in that working group in the proposed language.
Okay.
Irony, that's what this group is.
Yeah, so again, that's what is going, even if the legislature hasn't taken it up yet, what's the
I'll ask
story
Jamie that.
behind the story?
Last I spoke with him, he said, to Neil's point, it's more a matter of when, not if, because they have to get
Do
some of
something.
these
Yeah.
things done.
I think Jamie's expecting any time to be able to call back in to get it approved, to get everything approved.
Okay.
Can't believe they couldn't do it.
Okay,
Can't believe they couldn't do it the first time.
under new business, really this little background for Dan. This committee's been working systematically on looking at providing public services to Devens under several different scenarios, including going back to dividing Devens back up to the original towns, creating a town, the status quo. Neil, do you want to just provide the summary that you had written about the intent of the effort?
I think Neil walked away. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I'm just walking in. Just give me 1 second, okay?
Okay. So while Neil's sorting that out, we've been working our way through a list, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this. There are about 19 elements to it. We've worked on the general administration, recreation and open space, social services, and the submissions. Oh, Neil.
You literally were walking in.
Well, who's that up there?
Well done, Neil.
So
It's like magic. You're right through the screen.
well done.
He did say he was walking in, but
He's
Very
working hard.
impressive.
Yes.
So the two elements that we'll be talking about today have to do with education and police services. Then for the next time will be fire services. So Neil, do you want to just summarize the overall intent of this? I think you wrote the introduction.
Yeah, so the intent is, Harvard has a group, AIR has a group, and Shirley has a group of, if jurisdiction goes back to each of the towns, what would be the responsibility for them for all the types of municipal services? So education, police, fire, public works, all that stuff. And so what the committee has done has drafted this kind of matrix of all the municipal issues and who each town, how they would handle each of those issues if they were to receive Devens, their land jurisdiction back from Devens.
Understood.
So, this month, or the past 2 months, we were on hiatus. So each month we're picking a topic from that matrix or that spreadsheet, and the topic, 2 topics for this month are education and police. What have we already done? We did social services,
And administration,
open space,
and
and
open
recreation, and administration. So, if AIR and Harvard were to take back, and Shirley were to take back Devens, what would be the administrative responsibilities that may need to be added? What are the questions that the towns have in response to, we don't know what type of police services we're going to need for Devens. We don't know what type of fire services. If there's questions. So that's kind of what this matrix is for.
Right.
And Dan, even if we don't end up each town getting its historical lands back, I think this exercise is good for consultant,
Exactly.
right? There's
Informing a
it's just
consultant.
not kind of an exercise for the sake of an exercise, but
Yeah, exactly. It's putting together that information, and not just answers, but questions, like I said,
A lot of questions.
so that we could, provide that information to a consultant if that's the route we go, so that we're not just sitting here spinning our wheels wondering what if, and we can actually contribute to the final process of disposition in a more informed manner.
This is like the first pass at it, and by design, the responses should be less than 250 words, so really it's ready to get to the point. And we'll make sure you have the website address. Everything that we've done.
he's got it.
Okay, everything we've done so far is there.
Yep,
We'll
looked at it
just,
today.
systematically work our way through the list, and then make revisions. And as Neil says, it's good background for some outside organization to know how we're thinking, and also within the group itself, knowing how the different stakeholders would approach providing those services. So.
And I said how the town of Air, the town of Harvard, and the town of Shirley would deal with it, but I failed to mention that, if Devens becomes its own community, how the Devens residents and Devens, itself would deal with Devens becoming its own town.
Right.
So
And then
we
the-
looked at all those scenarios that are the possibilities
Sure.
under Chapter 498, what could happen for the disposition of Devens. Revert back to the surrounding towns, become its own town, or some combination of those two elements.
Right, and Neil and the deck have been contributing to a status quo scenario where
Right.
the things just stay the way they are.
So that could be
that's another
scenario
option.
or option.
Okay,
Continue pushing the cart down the road.
whatever. All right, so let's just jump right into the town of Air. educational services. Do you want to just summarize your submission?
Sure, let me go back to it. I've been letting everybody read while we've been talking. So for those who don't know, it's on the website, and I had to update, for those who might have looked at the packet on the website prior to this meeting, I had to update it today to add in Shirley's responses. And then I will update on the other documentation portion of the website. Give me a few days, I gotta clean it up, because now we've added another piece that I want to add, so I gotta clean up that page. So check back in about a week on the other documentation, because it'll probably change. Okay. You want to?
So, on the education, if the town of Air were to acquire a jurisdiction over the historic boundaries, currently, we would have capacity in the Air Shirley Regional School District for additional students. There is current student capacity at the Page Hilltop Elementary and Air, that's grades K through 5. At the Air Shirley Regional Middle School in Shirley for grades 6 through 8, and of course at the high school, grades 9 through 12. Additionally, we noted that if that was the model, that the Parker Charter School would be located, which is currently on Devens, within the boundaries of Air, and at this point we didn't see any significant impact on that. And then the Shriver Job Corps facility that does have an education training component would also be within the boundaries of Air, and we didn't see any change with that. We also just noted that the Air Shirley Regional School District is in the very beginning phases of developing a plan for the construction of a new elementary school, of which planning can and will look at the potential for increased student capacity should disposition occur, and that's in the very early stages. And you know, as a regional school district, there's even been discussions as at one regional elementary school. Currently, we each have our own, and so there's a lot to work out there. And of course, the town of Air would also honor school choice as an available option.
Okay.
So that's sort of just a quick snapshot on the education from Air.
Okay. So sticking with the town of Air, how about police services? How do you envision taking care of that?
So on the police services, and Janice put this together, and also with some input from the Air Police Chief, Brian Gill, we would need to increase minimum staffing from 2 officers to 3 officers per shift. Currently, the town is divided into 2 sectors, meaning Air. By reverting to the historic boundaries, it would create a 3rd sector. A minimum of 4 additional officers would be needed, bringing staffing from our current level of 21 sworn officers to 25. The supervisory staff would not need to be increased. And then just a note, additional equipment such as personal officer equipment, police vehicles would also be needed to accommodate the additional staffing needs. So per Chief Gill, the current situation, if we were to assume the police services, it ideally would want 3 officers as opposed to 2 on a shift, and we'd be looking to increase from our complement of 21 to 25, and that would be the 3rd sector of the town.
Okay. Any questions? Or here? Okay, town of Harvard, education. So Harvard, this was written in consultation with the school administration, currently has the capacity to continue educating all the children at Air. Devens. Yes. Yeah, we'll take Air too, I think.
No.
However,
Put my foot down, no.
Yeah, Victor, you don't want that headline.
However, the administration is aware of efforts to increase housing at Devens. And correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but most of the land that's either zoned presently for housing or could likely be used for housing is substantially within the boundaries of the historic boundaries of the town of Harvard.
I think that's a fair statement.
So if Harvard were to resume jurisdiction, going back just to its historic boundaries and housing was substantially increased, they raised the specter that facilities would need to be developed, including likelihood of building some kind of a school on Devens. The complication, if Harvard were, as everyone knows, presently Harvard educates all the children at Devens. If the historic boundaries were restored,
Not all. Some kids do attend Parker Charter.
some Parker Charter, there are choice kids who go elsewhere, they're private, they're,
The majority. We'll say the majority of
right.
kids.
But right now, anyone who moves to Devens, anywhere in Devens, would be educated, would have an option or right to be educated in the town of Harvard under the current education contract. If Harvard were to resume jurisdiction, there are presently about 40 housing units on Devens that are in the town of Air. So, depending upon how you interpret the existing contract, any children who live there now would continue to be educated within the Harvard district. How that would be paid for if Mass Development is no longer, right now, Mass Development is a signatory to that contract to provide educational services. If Mass Development were out of the picture, there is language in the contract that, I'm no lawyer, but I really questioned it. The language simply says whoever takes over would pay the cost of the contract. I don't know how you commit some unknown party to pay something in a contract, but nonetheless, that's how it's written. So the
It would be a
accommodation,
phased out process too.
you phased out, but the accommodation that the administration suggested was that they would somehow work to give students who live on Devens preference as choice students so that they could go to the Harvard schools. There's some question about granting preference, but we all know that once Devens at some point is unwound, there will be a piece of legislation, a mammoth piece of legislation that will deal with all aspects of that, and so choice preference could be a part of that negotiation. With respect to police services, the chief estimates that he would need 8 additional officers to provide round-the-clock coverage. He would need, he suggests you need to expand the current police station on Harvard. And he's putting some ideas out there. He suggested that might be accommodated by moving the ambulance service out of his police station and using that. So we'll see how that unfolds. But again, this is the kind of thinking that it's good to have it down on paper, because how would anybody know that that was a dynamic unless it were down? And also vehicle fleet would need to be augmented, and he's suggesting 4 or 5 cruisers. The police protection presently on Devens, as you'll see when we get to the other stakeholders, is pretty robust, and I think he's trying to accommodate that in his proposal. And then he talks about the transition from the state police, and no one knows how that will work. And then intends to work with the community in the transition, which is good to hear. The previous chief had actually submitted a proposal to provide police services on Devens. The chief in Harvard now was aware of that and reviewed it. In that proposal, what was suggested, is not written here, is that by expanding the Harvard police force to provide services to Devens, it would allow for greater police coverage within Harvard proper. So that kind of works into the whole notion of expanding the current police department. Questions? Comments? Devens residents. With respect to education, the document refers to Devens becoming a non-operating school district. It doesn't address the current education contract, but merely stating that, you know, there are other towns in the Commonwealth who don't have school districts and rely on other communities to educate, to provide education services. And clearly they've done some research on this. There are 15 other towns that do not have schools to meet all grade levels. And it indicates the scope of education services that this non-operating school district would provide. It would continue to receive Chapter 70 education funding. I happen to know a lot about that. I think Mass Development gets about $160,000 a year in Chapter 70 money, which is the amount that they've gotten for every year for decades. It's never changed because the Department of Education couldn't figure out how to use the current education funding formulas at Devens, so they just came up with a flat fee, and so that would substantially change if Devens became a town. Then he talks about the transformation of the Devens Education Advisory Committee into an elected school board. Any questions or comments? With respect to police services, the Devens residents are proposing that it would be a continuation of services provided by state police. And they point out that there are other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth that don't have police forces and rely on the state police to provide coverage.
Victor, those typically smaller, much smaller towns?
Exactly.
West?
Very small, I think. Yeah, but the bottom line is they envision continuing to contract with the state police. Okay, Neil, do you want to talk about?
Just so you know, Devens also answered the fire question, so they're ahead.
Yeah,
they submitted their homework early.
Yeah.
Over at
Someone's angling for teacher's pet.
I know.
We'll let, hopefully John will be here or Marissa at our next meeting and be able to go through that. Now, Logan, are you familiar with the submissions that Shirley has just made?
Yeah, so Brian kind of prepared those, but I can kind of give an overview. Basically, we haven't reached our maximum for the Shirley Middle School. We have, I think, 100 or 200 students who can still go there. So we're not really too worried about that, but we would do a feasibility study. Primarily, the land we get back there's no housing on it. It's just basically open fields, so there's nothing immediate that would have to be concerned about. But primarily, he mentions, like I said, the feasibility study, if we would need to add any teachers in the future, if there was growth in population, any need to increase, facilities in the school in general, in the long-term basis. That's basically what that says.
Okay. Yeah. All right, and what about police?
Policing, we don't see any specific need to increase policing as of yet. Our police force is down like 1 or 2 people, so we're trying to get them up in general. But like I said, there's also not a lot of housing in that area that we get back, so there's not a lot the policing would need to do, but they would also run a feasibility study in case anything would change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a relatively small addition to the town. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add, so Shirley has also caught up with the previous responses as far as administration, recreation, open space, and social services, which are right now in the packet on the website. Check back in a week and it'll be under the other documentation.
Okay. And we'll let Brian, who's the principal author of this, talk about it next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Neil, educational services.
Okay, for the status quo, so I just listed a number of, both public and private educational organizations that are currently at Devens, so everybody understands what's there right now. Preschool and early education, we've got a couple of daycare and school facilities, Applewild Daycare, Guild of St. Agnes. From a federal standpoint, we also have the Shriver Job Corps, which is on Devens, but that's a federal program for at-risk youth, education program for at-risk youth. We also have the military. The Army has an educational center in the garrison, which is outside of our current jurisdiction, but it's still within the Devens Regional Enterprise Zone. So just wanted to make sure people understood those federal uses as well too. I mentioned Parker Charter earlier. The Federal Bureau of Prisons also has an education institution in the prison. From public education school system, we're using Harvard with Mass Development's contract, as we've already mentioned. There are a few daycare facilities too for special needs folks, adult daycare, Seven Hills Aspire, Appleberry Behavioral Associates for kids with autism. Transitions Women's Shelter has educational programs associated with it as well. And Clear Path for Veterans also does, education training for veterans. We also have a number of educational programs because we're primarily, 95% business on Devens. We do have educational programs, private programs, nonprofit programs for businesses, job training, and those types of things through our Devens Eco-Efficiency Center. From a state police perspective, or from a policing perspective, we do contract with state police. Mass Development does. There's also the Fort Devens Police, correctional officers with the prison, and our regional emergency 911 services, which currently serve Berlin, Bolton, Boxborough, Devens, Harvard, Lancaster, and Lunenburg. So regional services, I think, are important to point out too. One thing I did want to point out with the state police, we gain a lot of extra benefits by having the state police and having a state police barracks on Devens. I don't know how many officers or Mass Development contracts with specifically dedicated to Devens, but with the barracks, there's police coming in and out all the time, that are not affiliated or directly associated with Devens. So that police presence is increased from that perspective. We also share our DPW facilities for bomb squad services, the STOP team, the Special Tactical Operations Unit. So there's a bunch of extra benefits to having the state police oversee Devens as well too. So.
Okay. Can we just go back to education? I have a question.
Yep.
And it also applies to police services. So right now, Mass Development, by virtue of revenue from the tax base, pays for the Devens, for the Harvard contract. That substantially. They get some aid education, but for the most part, the revenue that they generate from the tax base is how they fund their contract.
I have no idea. I do not know that, if that's, for sure or not.
Well, the question I have is, what of these other educational services does Mass Development make a financial contribution to any of these other educational services?
I believe they do to some. I mean, they're contracting with Clear Path for Veterans for certain services, but I don't know off the top of my head. I did say, at the beginning, a number of these are private. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what services were currently at Devens.
Okay.
Just so everyone's aware.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent list. I mean, it's an eye-opener in terms of all the educational activities that are going on. Ongoing at Devens. Same thing with police services. Again, Devens, it's my understanding, and I think based on the the financial information that I've reviewed, they also fund the state police contract based on revenue from the tax base. I'm not aware of any external grants the original $200 million commitment the state made to the project has been depleted. It's gone. It's been spent some time ago. So they're relying on the tax base. But same question applies. In addition to the state police contract, these other police services are not funded by mass development.
Well, the state police
Contract.
Yeah, the state police
Right.
contract. The bomb squad on, presence on Devens is, because it's a former military base. We go through unexploded ordnance training for all contractors and projects whenever anybody sticks a shovel in the ground. So, having those are special additions to the regular services over and above the regular police services.
And then the regional dispatch is an assessment to the towns you listed here? So that must be in the Town of Harvard budget is regional dispatch, right? Okay, so that would be a question for a consultant doing a financial analysis is what is the burden on the project to pay for all these educational services?
Right.
Okay. And so next time is fire services. Logan, if you'll make Brian aware of that, and that will be on the agenda. Okay, is any of this is making sense to you, Dan?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
thank you.
That's good, because we do work in a little bubble here, and it all makes sense to all of us, but, so it's good to have fresh eyes on this. Okay, moving right along. Any public comment? Items for our next agenda. Again, the Economic Development Bill, we'll make sure that's on there.
Hopefully we'll know about that as well as the one-stop grant.
Grant. Yeah, we'll have a grant update.
If either one of those comes in,
Yeah, before I let you.
we could start to get a little busier.
What would you think?
Or we can just hang out.
Yeah, the excuse was, well, no, they don't work in August anyway, which is understandable. And then in September, the excuse, well, we're too busy up to the primary, we're all out on campaigning, so we can't do anything then. And
Including saving a hospital. Don't get me started.
okay. All right.
Go ahead, get me started. Go ahead, I can get fired up real soon.
Okay, we've reached the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
Janice and Rich. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Without objection, we are adjourned.